Hello, it's Lion here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're going to be doing another comic book review. Today we're going to be looking at BELIT and Valeria, which is a 5-issue miniseries, and I think this is the only bit of the story that's going to be published, but the ending of it is kind of open-ended, so it could come back, and I think it will. I just don't think it's anytime soon, right? So here's all the issues. Here's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5, which is probably the best cover out of all of them. But I don't think any of them are particularly amazing. Honestly, it would have been pretty cool if they got Lucio Perillo to do at least one of them, but I think, you know, he's kind of tied down to Dynamite, so it's understandable that it wasn't possible, right? So, yeah, BELIT and Valeria are written by Max Bemis, and the artwork is done by Rodney Buscemi, and the coloring is by Danae Ribeiro, I think is how you say their name. It's published by Ablaze. It's a mature demographic, and the genre is sword and sorcery, or heroic fantasy, and it also has a lot of elements of this kind of like meta storytelling that has been going on lately, where, you know, authors are kind of trying to be self-aware about the fact that they're the ones that are writing the stories, and so the characters talk about the gods of their gods a bit, and there's these things called like story world and stuff like that. And it's kind of an annoying thing, honestly. I don't really find it enjoyable. And honestly, it feels kind of weird for authors to like circle jerk themselves in this kind of like way with all of these like meta types of stories that they tell about themselves and about each other through different, stories like Vampireverse and Red Sonja Unbreakable and this and a few other stories that I've read in my time collecting comic books. But, you know, it is what it is. It's just kind of what's going on right now, what is kind of popular at the moment. Even though it's kind of bad in my opinion, it's not very enjoyable at all. So it does not have an adaptation, and honestly, this adapts characters from Conan. And if you guys don't know, Ablaze has these unlicensed Conan character stories like the Sumerian, and I think those are actually based on the original works, but they're not licensed because the license holder is actually Titan at this point, but it was Marvel for a long time. However, I don't think it really matters because most of these characters are in the public domain, and most of the stories that Ablaze publishes I think are from European authors, and so their kind of laws about stuff like that are different, I think. So it's kind of interesting how that works, but it's not something I really care too much about. But technically, this does not have an adaptation, but it is adapting something else, right? So, yeah, and the rating for this is 3 out of 5. I didn't really love it, and I didn't really hate it. I'm going to keep it because I like the artwork inside the story, but the actual story itself is not good. So it's not something I'm going to reread anytime soon. The premise is that BELIT has returned to her body, and she awakens in the ocean. She comes back up to land, and she wants to figure out what the hell happened, why she is back into this cruel world. And so she sets out, eventually ends up picking up Valeria along the way, and they end up going on a quest to find answers. And generally speaking, it's pretty enjoyable. However, about halfway through the story in issue 3, it changes from, let me find the answers to my quest, to, oh shit, we accidentally awakened Crom, the warrior barbarian god, and he's gonna fuck the whole world. So we gotta go kill the guy that he is taking over, right? So I don't really like this change of the story. It would have been pretty good if it was just a reflective thing about BELIT and her kind of losses and the problems that she had, and why she came back, and how it's a second opportunity, but it's one that she doesn't want, and then having her beg her god, whoever that is, to remove her life from her so she could go back to being nothing, right? But it didn't really end up that way, and I think that's just because when people read comic books, they expect action, and they didn't think that, you know, the proper story would have worked. Which ends up having this issue where the story just feels like it needed 5 to 10 more issues to really make the story make sense, and make that transition from initially BELIT just wants to find answers to, oh shit, we accidentally fucked up the world, we gotta go save it now. And, you know, I think that's just an issue with comic books, but I mostly think it's also an issue with this author specifically because, man, he writes so much and doesn't say shit when he's talking. So we'll get into that. So the plot line here is more or less what I've just explained. So BELIT awakens. Valeria has been captured by BELIT herself after a while. And then they have this kind of bullshit situation where this weird merchant wants BELIT and Valeria, and then they end up joining forces to kind of take this guy down, and then they go to a wizard orgy, and they wreck it, and they kind of destroy it and kill all of the wizards, and then this causes an issue because this has made the people that had control over the prison for Crom to die, and so they died, and so Crom has reawakened, and he takes over the god world, which I think is called Storyland or something like that, because, you know, the gods have gods, which are the writers, which again is a very weird thing to kind of be proud of doing and putting in so many works, but, you know, whatever, it's fine. And it turns out that Crom ended up killing all the gods. He specifically killed 2 of them, well, 1, and then the other one kind of managed to escape. The first one that he killed that was significant is the Earth Mother, the woman that Crom was technically in love with, but also not really because of the way that his mythology works. And so he kills her. She, in her rage, gives the power over to her child, or her child, who's also sisters with Crom. And then Crom goes to her. Crom gets damaged by her because she has like a dick, and so she doesn't count as a woman, even though she's female. Really weird. It's kind of like, she's kind of like the Loki equivalent, and Crom would be like Odin, I guess. And then the original Earth goddess plus this other goddess that's kind of like Loki end up providing BELIT with life again, and so she wakens, and so they figure this out, and now it turns out that Crom is coming down to Earth, taking over specific barbarian men in order to kind of destroy the other gods on this plane, right? And well, it's a kind of a problem, and there's bullshit, and it's just really confusing, but it kind of works. Eventually, they find out who it is. It's this guy Bjorg, and they have a plan, and they go, and BELIT goes to him, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna be your wife. And then she betrays him, obviously, because that was the plan. And then Hortuga, who happened to be a Sumerian, I think, sees the death of this guy taken over by Crom, and so he becomes like entranced by Crom's glory, I guess, and so he kind of gets taken over as well. And honestly, it was a very weird story, and mostly the worst part about it was that the storytelling medium, or the way that the story was set up, was through this guy who was a bard. His name was Kurt, I think, and it was initially kind of funny, but then it was weird because it was trying to be like, I'm an ally to feminists type thing, but in like a very dumb way, because the characters are 2 super unnecessarily hot women that end up in the most ridiculous, like, fan servicey, like, there's no reason why these chicks should be doing this with each other or with the guys that they're with, unless it's to appeal to, like, the fact that, you know, sex sells. But then the guy, through this character, is trying to expound on the fact that he's, like, this amazing ally for women and how they're the best thing ever. And it's, like, really weird. It doesn't really make any sense because it kind of, like, juxtaposes in a weird way. Now, I think I understand what he was trying to go with. It was, like, women's femininity or sexuality is important, and it is a part of their strength. But the way that he worded it and the way that he made it happen was really fucking disgustingly bad. Like, it was stupid as hell. It was not a very good way of explaining this plot point, right? Or this thought process. So it was really ridiculous. And I'm kind of happy that it was kind of dropped halfway through the story. And it was a bit too wordy. And honestly, it was like, the best way I can describe this, the way Max Bemis wrote this, is like, it's like when a 7th grader finds out a little bit about philosophy or politics, and suddenly they think they're the most amazing literary mind in existence. And so they use big words and very simple thought processes in order to sound like they're really amazing thinkers. And what ends up happening is that you can just like tell that this person has no fucking clue what they're saying, right? Which is how most 7th graders talk. At least the ones that think that they're thoughtful individuals. And basically, anytime the bard talked, it felt like this. The problem is that usually I can kind of be like, oh, okay, this is just the character of this bard. but it didn't feel like it was a character. It felt like it was the author himself talking through the mouth of this character, right? And it was really, really bad. It didn't really work. And so this kind of ridiculously wordy situation, plus the fact that it was like supposed to be women power, but it wasn't executed well, and it made no sense compared to what Bella and Valeria were actually doing in the story. And then the fact that the story just felt like it needed more issues to complete makes this a pretty bad thing to read. But like I said, the artwork is really good, so I'm going to keep it. But it is what it is, right? So it's not good. I don't recommend you guys check it out. Characters-wise, Bella and Valeria, and then Belle, who I think is the goddess person that's like Loki. She's kind of like a gargoyle, and apparently she has a dick, so she can hurt Crom, even though Crom is supposed to not be hurt by man or woman, but because she's both, she can hurt him, right? Which is cool and interesting, but it's not really all that important because it only happens and matters for like one scene. And then there's, of course, Crom. Those are the 4 main characters. There's a few other ones like Kurt and Hortuga, but they don't matter. And then world building wise, we get some Robert E. Howard essays at the back, which are pretty good, but they're a bit dense because they're more like historical documents that he made himself for his stories. And so they're not necessarily the most interesting reads in terms of like how they're explained, but they're pretty interesting if you're interested in Conan and the world that he lives in. However, they're very dense, so I don't recommend you read all of them, you know, together. I recommend you read them a little bit at a time so that you can kind of have time to absorb stuff and not really get bored by the denseness of it, right? So, yeah, the God lore is interesting, but again, it is too meta for my taste. It's just really weird for authors to kind of like prop themselves up as being like these gods of these characters. Like, yes, I understand what you're saying. Like, that phrase doesn't in itself have any issues, but the way that they do it and the fact that they do it so often is really freaking annoying and honestly speaks a lot about the type of people they are. And it's really weird to be like this narcissistic. Like, can you imagine like an engineer, like engineering something to say that he's the best? Like, it's really weird, right? It's really odd. It doesn't make any sense. But, you know, it is what they've been doing for a while, and it's really annoying. But the world building is fine. But it's not really all that good because it doesn't really explain anything meaningful about any of the characters or any of the world building that or any of the world that they are inhabiting, right? So it is what it is. Artwork and fan service wise, very good art. Colors are sometimes not the best, but generally they're all right. And there's a lot of tits and ass, and it's very good and really enjoyable. But it really feels like they decided, like, okay, there's enough tits and ass here to keep people entertained. Don't bother with the story. And that sucks because I want both. Like, I want a really cool, interesting story that's introspective about Bella and her feelings about herself and the world that she inhabits. And I also really want to see, you know, all of the weird fan servicey bits that they had in this book. So it kind of sucks, but it's also enjoyable. And I really dislike that because, broadly speaking, it's predominantly bad. And I really wish it was predominantly good. So, yeah, ratings wise is 3 out of 5. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to reread it anytime soon. And honestly, maybe I won't ever read it ever again. So, there you go. That's Bella and Valeria. That's my review for it. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know your thought. Let me know if you've read this and what you thought about it. And do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm too hard on Max Bemis? Or do you think I'm completely right on the money about him? I don't know. Let me know down below. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.